I'd like to note that Peter is part of our group and he's the nearest the exit, so if this goes awry, he's out the door real quick. And we've already lost one of our group earlier on, so we're a little bit astray here. So at the mid-break, we discussed our plans to pursue potentially having a market downtown, a farmer's market downtown, talking about the issues of accessibility and cost associated with local markets. We've had to narrow down things considerably, especially with the advice we got at the halfway point. So we decided to focus purely on our idea of having this passport to healthy living. We had to let go of some of our other important things that we thought were important. That was hard, but we did. We quickly made a brief mission statement, not great, but the purpose of the passport to healthy living is to provide an incentive to the consumer to eat and live a healthy lifestyle while supporting Kelowna's local food market. The vision would be to help maintain the sustainability of the local food industry by adding to the increased market that will come out and participate because of the value added through this passport to healthy living. The process from which we went, we did the storyboard kind of user experience flow. We have a little bit of that embedded within. Most of it's in that room on the boards scattered, but we'll try to incorporate as much of it as possible during the presentation. We have just a quick little screen capture of the actual farmers market webpage, which we'll probably use in our idea, somehow linking in the passport to healthy living within their website that already exists. Hopefully their IT teams can actually manage that load. So the problem, we removed the convenience factor, which was a tough one because we really felt that strongly that convenience was, just going to Costco, getting it all done and not having to deal with the market at all was a big factor for us. But we decided to focus more on that cost problem, which we don't really address directly, but it's more so indirectly. Do you want me to move? Are you good?
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll let you back.
So the problem, we addressed the cost by having the passport help to compensate for the added cost of the shopping at the local farmers market by adding that consumer incentive. So the costs aren't changing, the prices are the same, but hopefully the consumer will think, hey, if I spend X amount of money or buy so much, I'll actually get an incentive. Much like most of the loyalty rewards programs you'll see at various chains. So we have two options for the passport. This was a bit of a contentious issue. We started initially with the print version being like a nice little passport. I don't know if any of you have been to the Yukon, but they have a Yukon passport that you can go around the Yukon and get stamps, and you can collect them. It's really cool. It looks just like a passport. So we thought of something like that for the actual farmers market. The issue came up, cost of the printed version, how many do we have to pump out, and then we ended up kind of going down the old avenue of applications for the cell phones, which, does it hit all of our target market? Not necessarily. A vast majority of us do have cell phones and tablets and ways of scanning devices, but there is still that print version that we thought we could have an option for.
So they're basically complementing each other.
Yeah, and they will work in sync. So bear with it, this is very rough, but we had the idea of having, in that passport, you could have either a weekly idea, or it could be monthly, it could be bi-monthly. But here would be a weekly example. Say on May 17th, on a Saturday, you can collect 5 stamps for weekly rewards. So, and also we wanted to incorporate within the application the Canadian Guide for Healthy Eating, all the different food groups, and we can have that linked in as well, so people can also be exposed to that kind of thing. We were trying to find a way of actually linking in the food guide with what people are buying, so you can actually visually see if you're buying just veggies and maybe veggies and meat, and you're not getting your fruit or you're not getting your dairy, and you'll kind of go, oh, hey, maybe I should be buying some more dairy and that kind of thing. So it's another added benefit just to the healthy lifestyle kind of aspect. Here's the stamped version. So we'd have a layout like this on a book. Something a little more developed would probably be more appropriate for each vendor. So each vendor would have a stamp that would be exclusive to their own. Now the question was raised, what happens if someone that has the app version forgets their application at home or their iPhone at home? What do? You can get the book at the local market. We'll have an information stand. You can pick up the book. You can still get your stamps, each being different from your local vendor. And then I guess technology-wise, I've been told that it's able, you can just take a snapshot of that photo of this, and it'll actually sync, and it can actually collect your stamps as points toward the
So
rewards program.
it will recognize and convert those stamps into something, some table, some electronic table, I
Yeah.
guess.
So you can just go home, take a snapshot, and you have both, and you're not losing any points. On the end of that so here's our little stamp process. Here we go. Present this passport to any of the following local businesses to redeem their respective rewards. So you have to get your 5 stamps, so you have to go to 5 separate vendors to get different stamps. So it encourages you to shop from different vendors and keep that flow and economy of the farmers market going. So each person you go, you buy 5 from 5 different cherry vendors or fruit vendors, that's fine. That gets you that reward for that week. Here we go. Your rewards, they will vary depending on the amount of participation from the community and the vendors, hopefully local businesses. Offers are available for the that week of May 19th through May 25th. Here's an example of, say, Sam's Vineyard, if you made it all up. Receive 15% off any house wine, 50% in a drop-in to visit Parkinson's Rec Center, or the bus pass idea of giving a free day of transit. So we're trying to touch on the healthy living aspect of the rewards program, so be it Parkinson's Rec Center, or things that potentially the city could offer at a very minimal cost. That would also be great. We moved away from the Lululemon aspect of the rewards program. That was also a little bit contentious.
No judgment.
No judgment. So that will be available, and then the next week there'll be another set of stamps, and you get your stamps on the Saturday, and you'll have a different set of rewards for that week that you can redeem. With the redeemable rewards, I believe we had a scanned option that we were thinking that you could actually go and then you'll scan it. So just so you can't double dip, and you can't get 50% off and 50% off, it'll be a one-time use and it'll be linked to your account. The cell phone application. So we kind of modeled it after the Starbucks reward program. Most of you may not know or may know, there's like a silver, gold level Starbucks reward program, and you can pay, and after so many coffees, you reach a gold level, and then you can get like a free coffee every 12 espressos or whatever it is, and you see a little meter charge up. So that's very much what we modeled for this application. So each consumer can track the rewards on their mobile device as well. And this is our rewards template. It'll be like a meter that will fill up. So it'll start empty, and then as you slowly get your 5 coupons or your 5 stamps for that week, you'll reach your full rewards to the status. And then you'll be able to get the actual rewards associated with it. The passport will also include on the app, you'll have obviously maps to the farmers markets, to the available markets, to the different farms, anything that we think might actually apply to the local food industry.
The same design will be applicable to print version.
Yeah, and the passport will transfer it over. Obviously the other, it's a little bit more archaic, my Word document with the pictures just slapped in there, but we would apply something like this into that model. You can have recipes, we also thought about that, Canadian Food Guide, and the actual businesses that might be associated, so vineyards and local things. So it's just like it's all right there. Through an application, you collect your rewards, but you also have access to all the different local community connections. Part of our user flow, which, we were just saying that, if you came to Kelowna first off, you didn't move in, first thing you're probably going to do is you're going to go search Kijiji or Castanet, and you're going to furnish your apartment or your house. And we thought the best thing to do at that point would have a farmers market ad on one of those sites and make sure that it's clear that there is a rewards program attached to that. So we would actually encourage the farmers market to have that little icon right there so people could click, download the app right away, and then move on. So we said Sam, same is also Sam's name, but sometimes he likes to add an E to his name, so it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. So Sam downloads the application, and he uses the map from the application. Sam finds out where the farmer's market is. He heads on there on Saturday, buys some apples. He easily scans the barcode presented at the vendor's table. So this is kind of an essential part of what we decided, because at first we were thinking that we could potentially have a card-based program, much like Save on Foods or anything. But the issue is the vendors would have to have the technology to support that, each having a scanning device, which we didn't think that was plausible. So we went the opposite way, we have the scanning device, they will just have a barcode associated with each of their vendor tables. And then you can just quickly scan it, and each one, it doesn't matter, you can just provide Farmer Joe with his barcode, and he sits it on his counter. So Sam got his apple, he scans his barcode, Sam's well on his way to collecting his rewards. Sam wants to continue to buy fresh local apples to get his 10% off at his local store. I think that's all, yeah, that's kind of the idea and the gist of what we have. We believe that it will encourage people to come in and spend some more money at the farmers markets and support that local food industry. By doing so, getting the rewards through other industries and supporting the local economy as well. So, any questions? I'm sure there are many. And I'll address all questions to Peter.
So, what kind of research did you do?
Oh, lots.
And who did you talk?
Next question.
Who did you talk to? What did you learn?
We talked to people in our groups. To be honest, we did not do that much market research. We'd like to go and do maybe some Survey Monkey kind of surveys, send them out there. Obviously, that takes time to collect that data and get people to respond to that.
Yeah, something similar like this was done in Kelowna. So they have done a book like this, but they did a prize at the end, as opposed to doing it for the reward process.
Okay.
Cool. So you did some research on what other places are doing.
Yeah, and we kind of we massed it. We looked at the Starbucks model. We also looked at passport education. We looked at different passport models that have existed, like the Yukon, various things like that. As far as actual market research with people, besides our little focus group like I mentioned earlier, no, we didn't hit the streets. We could definitely do that. I'd like to actually target more focus groups at the farmers market, maybe set up a tent, get us around a round table, just get people to come on in, have some cherries, sit down, give us 5 minutes of their time, seeing if they're even interested in a rewards program. That would be a start. Things like that.
I think part of the learning experience for you guys will be that, like, I think what you suggest are good ideas. The only problem is they're not attainable in the amount of time that you have. So part of the learning experience is that you learn to prototype really fast, really informal. So a bit like the last group, you do those phone calls and you talk to the people that you know, and you could probably like go outside today and just like grab someone in the street and say, hey, what do you think of this idea, right? So like try to gather as much of that information as you can without formalizing the process of or a survey, just because the lack of the time. Of course, it's all hypothetical, right? Like some people in the spot might say, yeah, I will do it, but in reality it might be a different story. So I think that's for part of the design job that you have to be more like fast in your iterations with your prototyping, and that's part of that. I don't know if you guys agree with that idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely part of it. The one thing I did notice is as soon as you put up the app, there was something delightful about that I heard, I could hear. So even the reaction you got from the room, the reaction you got from the room when that came up was interesting to me. There was an emotional response to that, and it would have been interesting to test that out, like before, like you had a good experience here. All of a sudden that came up, and you're like, oh, like there was something like something about that was interesting that you could have tested out in the streets. That would be really cool.
Yeah, it has a nice friendly vibe.
We'll try to go to our art museum.
That was amazing.
Yeah, beautiful. That was cool.
We have a question.
Yeah, so for your, like, the designation of the stamps, you had the 5 criteria based on, like, the Canadian, like, food guide. Will that change based on what season it is? Because I know, like, right now it's really difficult to find fruit at your local farmers market, just based on the growing. So I was wondering if you had thought about
We thought at more crafts, like we're gonna definitely have other categories. It doesn't have to be the food aspect, but that is something that we have to develop and look into further. I think we were thinking about doing that, especially for celiacs and various things. There's other charts that we could create to specify for certain demos.
Vegan is gonna have a hard time.
Yeah.
These are more standard than these are like conventional 4 to 6 food groups that are they're conventional, but yeah, they can be customized based on
Much like the Starbucks model, they can go back and buy 1 cherry each time and get your points.
So, yeah, I want to touch on that actually because we did some research on the Starbucks model, and like Starbucks actually tried to use the stamp card in the past, right? And didn't work that well for them because the inconvenience of carrying the card, lose the card, like that's kind of like every coffee shop that has that card, you end up losing it unless you're really good at it, right? So when they came with the app, things changed for them quite substantially because they find out that it will be really hard for you to lose your cell phone, and you always have it with you, and the fact that you can pay with the phone, and you have a reward program, and you can set it up to automatically recharge with your credit card. People like got on the hook, the sales improved because of the convenience of it, right? So I think you guys' idea, I could argue either way that that's part of your research. That when you introduce a punch card with a stamp, could work against the idea that you have. I don't know, could be, right? It's part of your research. Whereas the app could work. You mentioned that the app might depend on your user, but I don't remember that you mentioned what kind of user you have. Like, it's really hard to argue now that, I mean, unless you're like senior citizen, that nobody has a cell phone.
I don't have a cell phone.
Right? You are a senior citizen.
I don't have a cell phone. I got rid of it. I get splitting headaches. I was on call for 10 years. I now get like an ice pick headache whenever I hold my cell phone in my head.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right.
But your wife has one, right?
Yeah, she has.
Good.
Yeah.
Just send her.
But she only uses it for texting various things.
But you can always get print version.
Yeah,
I think in your case, like in your particular case, you might not represent the majority of your users.
Yeah.
And again, I could be wrong, so that's part of your research. Like, do we need an app or do we need an actual? Maybe they really like the idea that is like a print document that looks like a passport that you carry with you, right? That might be the answer. And like Charity, like to me came the idea too. Like, I have friends that are vegans, and if you see this. A picture of a cow, there will be discussions and arguments here going forever. So your app could be really good at, you know, it's kind of like part of that personalization of the user. So it's like, hey, are you a male, female, where's your age range, are you vegan or are you allergic? And then the app kind of like customize what producers, like match the customer to the producers and the product, so they take advantage of your reward program in an equal way. Without being exposed to something that they don't have to, right? So
I think to that point, I just build on that point. I think you're almost trying to do two things with the design. I think your main focus is clearly connecting people to local artisans and farmers to buy local. That's number one, and you're incentivizing it through rewards. That's all kind of similar goal. It seems like there's a secondary frame, which is, and also helping them with their Canada Healthy Eating Guide, which I actually think is a very contentious point. I personally don't eat by the Canada Healthy Eating Guide. I think most people right now don't and would probably have medical disputes about it. So I would say, if they don't try to tell people how to eat, just really focus on the main goal, which is connecting them to the businesses and local owners. Done. You know, I just think when you look, again, with your users, that's probably the first piece of feedback you would get is, well, I'm a vegan, this is not the app for me, which is clearly, that's not the point of the app, so maybe just get rid of
I
it.
can answer to that because we're not trying to guide people how to eat.
Exactly.
We're just basically presenting with facts what they're shopped for.
Right.
And then they can decide for themselves, you know.
Yeah.
It just gives you a clear picture of, you know, of some trends in shopping.
Yeah, and I think you could do that with, or even, say, reversing how the design works. Rather than having a template that they fill in, every time they're scanning a code, you're popping up. That was in the fruit category, that was in the meat category. Then they can still see, they're still getting the relevant information, you're just not telling them what to do, you're showing them what they've done. It's just looking at the approach differently.
you wanna help your users to make a decision. So like everyone who sells a product, they have to simplify the reasons why you want this product and how you get to it, and like make it really easy, right?
Yeah.
So to give you an idea, like I lost my wallet yesterday. I went to the bank, and I was really stressed about it. And I was like,
Is this
man,
for real?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know.
No, this is today, right? So I was like, man, like this is gonna be a headache. I had to call Visa, cancel, blah blah blah, and like a dial number, I pressed number 3. Visa's cancel, and I was like, wow, like that was really easy. Like they make it really easy to cancel it, and they make it really easy to pay with it, and they make it really easy to apply for it. Why? Because they really want you to get one, right? So they simplify the process for the user to say, like you don't have to wait 2 hours anymore on the phone to do something. So in the app, which probably would dig into much into how you should design it, but it's more like you want to simplify those decisions to your users. And to Charlie's point is like, I agree, like the Canadian food guy, like erase flags because they're like, I don't follow that, so why do you want to tell me about it, right? So now, I think you guys have a really good idea, right? I think you guys simplify your idea from launch to now, like I think it's more solid to where you want to go. And maybe with some of the feedback, then you can like narrow it more, and like then you can go from there, right? So I think it's a good idea.
I think it's awesome. I just have one quick question. I think, well, first to shout out, I think that you had summarized your main goal or main problem around cost. And one question, one comment around that. The question is, did you research, what is the cost difference between shopping, say, at a farmer's market versus a local grocery store? Is there a cost difference, or is it a cost perception difference, I guess is the question.
We haven't looked up numbers,
Okay.
but I know, from what I know, the main cost difference comes from the packaging. And that's why, let's say Costco product, like shopping at Costco is much less, because they sell it in bulk, which excludes the, some of the packaging costs. At farmers market, we don't have packaging as well. So I don't think that should be that much, like that more expensive.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we have to research numbers, like we have to come up with like some tables.
Yeah.
I think
Certain numbers.
a slight problem with that is as well, each vendor will be, they compete within the market themselves, right? Some guy's selling corn for $1 each, the next around the corner he's selling for 50 cents. So it really depends on a daily basis how much, what his cornfield look like, or how much, his actual his supply of products that, maybe he has an abundance of apples, supply and demand, so.
So maybe when you do your research, what you'll find is you're actually dealing with a perception of cost as a problem versus an actual cost problem. And I think subconsciously or consciously, the way that you're dealing with that here that I think is really interesting is through incentivizing even more, right? Not only are you shopping local, but we're going to give you discounted coupons on other things. I think that's really interesting focus, whether cost is actually a problem or not. People like to feel like they're getting a discount, and so you're playing on that emotion of, sweet, I'm getting a deal. Number one, you're gamifying it. Wow, if I get 5, I get a deal. That's like, ooh, I gotta get 5, and you feel like a sense of accomplishment, and then you're also getting a deal. You kind of feel like you're just cheating the system, and that's awesome.
We wanted something tangible too, like, and we thought, lowering costs or reducing the tax incentives on, it's gonna be hard for us to accomplish. One day, we thought, well, we might not be able to lower the cost of what they're selling things for, but we could throw an incentive program that local community and businesses can contribute to.
Really interesting.
So this is something easy and tangible that we can do without really affecting the actual farmer.
So I had just a few points. So I think you kind of touched on some of them. So it's interesting that you focused, or you stated the problem was cost. I think what you've actually created here is something has a different, it's actually solving a different problem, and that's a habit problem.
Yeah, it's return business.
You've created something here that has that gamification, but it actually is habit forming, right? So I'm going to collect 5 each week, and it now becomes a routine and a habit. And perhaps, having something in there, I'm thinking almost a little Foursquare-ish, where you get badges for meeting certain goals and collecting certain numbers and going to certain places. And, could be an interesting.
Yeah, you could connect it to social
could be
media.
an interesting element there. I also agree about the Canadian Food Guide. When I first saw it, I wrote that it seemed like you were focusing on healthy eating and not on local, right? So I do see that there's a local element there, but I think you've kind of maybe confused or mixed those. So I don't know, it might be something that you want to think about as to whether you want to tackle both things or just one thing, right?
Local blog or something.
I really like it. I'm a little bit disappointed that you didn't get out there and actually talk to people about what kinds of things they might have liked to see in this app, right? So I see recipes. I question recipes because I'm thinking, wow, I got to read a recipe on my little iPhone. This is going to be really small. How am I going to even be able to read the instructions? So, I guess it might work on an iPad, but I'm not sure if that's such a good match. But, one thing that really struck me as missing here was this idea of a grocery list, right? Well, I'm going to go to these places
That's on
and
the
get all the
next page.
things.
Oh, right.
Little town.
Actually knowing the ability to actually be able to kind of either create the items or choose from a list of common items, so that when I get there, I don't forget to buy the apples, right, or the onions, or whatever it is, right, that I can actually combine it with a little bit of a grocery list. But I think, you know, if you put that in front of people, you would have generated some ideas about things that would make sense in there.
The other, I know we're getting a little bit long, but the one thing I thought of as soon as I saw this is, right now, the competitive advantage all the big food companies have is data. They're collecting tons and tons of data on our person. What the local producers don't have is good data, and you guys would be able to collect that data for them.
Yeah.
So you're actually solving this other really interesting problem. There's an opportunity there to collect really good data on what are people buying locally, what's going up, what's going down, what do they buy over here, what do they buy over there.
And specifically, what do they buy from me?
Yes.
You know?
And so that would be very interesting. You're already going to be collecting that data, and there's like this other interesting opportunity, solving a different problem for growers that would be really cool, because the more data they have, the more they can actually, their competition is Safeway. So how are they going to fight? How are they going to compete? They're going to compete with better data. They're going to compete with this kind of, this stuff that their competitors are already doing. So that's kind of a cool opportunity. That
The one problem with this current model, though, would be the fact that, you know, sometimes a florist or someone who sells flowers does sell farm fresh eggs, free run. So how do you know, based on our one barcode for that flower stand, what do they buy, eggs or flowers?
Yeah,
So that's our one,
yeah,
that's
that's
the
true.
one difficulty with that we looked into.
So
Can I
time,
wrap it up? We're running a little bit behind.
one question.
It was just actually an idea. If cost is the problem that you want to address, one of the cool things that you could do is talk about how expensive cheap food actually is. So when you buy cheap food, it has huge cost on the environment and on your health. So let's say they're going to buy something at a booth. It's the idea of shopping with impact. So they scan the barcode and you talk about the social or environmental impact that they're having when they buy that product in relation to the industrial food system equivalent, so that they can see that they might be paying 10 cents more, but the environmental and health implications of spending the extra 10 cents actually in the long run is less costly than the alternative. So it's actually cheaper to buy from the farmer's market because you don't spend billions of dollars on healthcare. You're saving the environment, transportation, all of those things. So it's like shopping with impact, scan the barcode. This is the difference I'm making in the world by buying that product from that booth. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.